a student or your child who scores a poor grade goes into a cyber cafe, gets the report card scanned, then edited in a vector graphics editing software, and then one is able to change the scores without necessarily interfering with key features such as rubber stamps, the teacher's signature. So basically, a child who came from school with a D- will easily come home with an A or a B+. And as a parent, especially if you don't follow up on this, then you get to a point where your child lies to you all through school days. So this is a conversation we want to have with Amos Kaburu, who's an education expert. He's speaking to us on phone. Amos, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning, Linda, and good morning to our KTN viewers.
So give me your initial reaction. You now have children who are going into cyber cafes to change their exam results. Fingers are being pointed at harsh parents who do not want, who basically give specific targets to their children. You must come home with this if you do not. So you have children who do not want to offend their parents going into cyber cafes. But then what does this say about the caliber of students that we now have and indeed the society?
Thank you, Linda. I think that the student thinking has never changed over time. Students will always try to think ahead of the adults who are caregivers, whether they are parents, whether they are teachers, whether they are other significant adults. They really do not think that the challenge is around harsh parents, but rather the challenge is around parents who are disconnected from the school system. Because a parent who has kept in touch with the school system would definitely be in a position to note any form of suspicious results. Because there's no way your son or your daughter could have come with a C- last term and this term gives you an airplane and you are ready to it. So a parent who is heavily involved in the education of their children could probably be having a mechanism of tracking how their children are performing so that any form of leapfrogging around results is something that is outlier in nature, it is flagged out and such. But now back really to the real issue, I think it just points to the lots of significant pressure that we have in our schools, where children have to be made to believe that examinations are a matter of life and death. And so if I do not perform in a certain way, the fewer spaces and chances available post-secondary school, I am almost missing out the opportunity. So they have to wallow in this miasma of, let me live a certain life for a certain time, perhaps to please everyone that I'm performing well. And then when the results come out, one will say that perhaps the examinations were hard, examinations were moderated, the young results were... I mean, they come. So I think it's a mix of all these issues that requires both a policy intervention, requires parental consciousness, as well as school interventions and mechanisms that just ensure that we're able to feed back the right information to the parents. Do we just need to rely on the report cards alone? Schools that have digitized perhaps be wiring results already to the parents. You go to a school like Jamhuri High School, where even as much as once a student logs in, the parent receives the report that your son or daughter has already arrived in school.
Tell me, Kaburu, from where you sit, there are those who argue that probably the society has played a very big role in this. We have a society where people get what they want in a not so ethical manner and get away with it. So you have students thinking, I can as well get away with this.
Yes, partly it will be attributed to that, but I think it's also the failure of those of us who are in the responsibility of training up our children to know that you cannot live a life for so long, because much as you may be looking at other people and perhaps feeling that they have got scot-free, it does not guarantee you that you'll also go through scot-free. We are having people who are suffering. We have seen students who have been dragged to court recently because of getting involved in the issues of down dormitories and such. So I think the whole aspect of speaking to an individual student, this may be a phenomenon, this may be a trend that is ongoing, but what does it practically? Research reports indicates that the behaviors is the amalgamation of the experiences that leads to habits, and therefore the character acquired in high school has a significant impact on your life. And therefore some of the behaviors and habits that our students speak while in high school has tremendous effect later on in life. So if they don't get right certain things, such teenage years of 14, 15, 16, 17, by the time they transit into adulthood, it becomes almost impossible for them to unlearn what they have learned. So it's important that we feed the right experience and the right stimuli, so that whatever they are picking in and they have to reproduce it later on, it is something that is more meaningful to them. Because the moment they begin to recognize that, first of all, it's about me, it's not just about everyone else. To give them the same voices to others where they can't communicate. And that's why when they are faced with the challenges at school, they resort to other unacceptable behavior such as arson, fighting, resorting into drugs. There's now lots of teenage and underage sex that is happening within the student community.
Kaburu, so finally, before I let you go, you're an educationist. You've dealt with such cases. What is the solution? What do we do? Because you will still have children going into cyber cafes to have their results changed. You will still have some parents who really do not pay attention to what their students, what their children are doing. What then can we as a society or the education sector do?
I think the first thing that we need to do is to revise our assessment frameworks and now begin to look at what matters most. And what matters most has to focus on the core skills as well as other functional skills. So assessment framework to focus on academic, but it also focuses on other aspects, social-emotional development. You're talking about social skills, you're talking about creativity, you're talking about negotiations, you're talking about core competences required, good citizenship, learning to learn, and other forms of social, organic and its fluid nature. So we have to start from a highly